And so, in trying to introduce us to this friendly conductor, the essayist narrates an incident that he has experienced. I first became conscious of his existence one day when I jumped onto a bus and found that I had left home without any money in my pocket. Everyone has had the experience and knows the feeling, the mixed feeling which the discovery arouses. You're annoyed because you look like a fool at the best and like a knave at the worst. You would not be at all surprised if the conductor eyed you coldly as much as to say, "Yes, I know that stale old trick. Now then, off you get." And even if the conductor is a good fellow and lets you down easily, you are faced with the necessity of going back and the inconvenience, perhaps, of missing your train or your engagement. Having searched my pockets in vain for stray coppers and having found I was utterly penniless, I told the conductor with as honest a face as I could assume that I couldn't pay the fare and must go back for money. The author reminds us all that we have all probably been in a situation like this, where we have forgotten to carry money from home, and if you try to show your problem, you will look like a fool or you will look like a very dishonest man, and the conductor will most probably tell you to get out of the bus. What then did the conductor do in this situation to help the author? Let's see. "Oh, you needn't get off. That's all right," said he. "All right," said I, "but I haven't a copper on me." "Oh, I'll book you through," he replied. "Where do you want to go?" And he handled his bundle of tickets with the air of a man who was prepared to give me a ticket from anywhere from the bank to Hong Kong. I said it was very kind of him and told him where I wanted to go, and as he gave me the ticket, I said, "But where shall I send the fare?" "Oh, you'll see me some day, all right," he said cheerfully. He turned to go, and then, luckily, my fingers, still wandering in the corner of my pockets, lighted on a shilling, and the amount was squared. Here the conductor acted in the most unusual way. He went, in fact, out of his way to help the conductor in the situation. He said, "Never mind, I will give you a ticket and you can go to your destination." And when the author wanted to know where he could meet the conductor in order to repay him, the conductor said, "No problem, you will meet me some other time on a bus and we can settle the account then." And what happened after that was, the author did find a stray coin and he was able to pay the conductor the money that he owed him. But that fact did not lessen the glow of pleasure which so good-natured an action had given me. The author was very, very happy. He experienced a glow of pleasure. He says it was more because he had come across such a respectful and polite gentleman, not so much because he had managed to find a coin or two in his pocket somewhere. The author continues to tell us about this friendly conductor. "A few days after, my most sensitive toe was trampled on rather heavily As I sat reading on the top of a bus, I looked up with some anger and more agony and saw my friend of the cheerful countenance. One day, when the author was travelling again in a bus which probably looked like the one you can see in the picture with an open top, it was a double-decker bus. It so happened that the same conductor was on the bus and he happened to trample the author's toe. "Sorry, sir," he said. "I know these are heavy boots. Got 'em because my own feet got trod so much, and now I'm treading on other people's. Hope I didn't hurt you, sir." He had hurt me, but he was so nice about it that I assured him he didn't. After this, I began to observe him whenever I boarded his bus, and found a curious pleasure in the constant good nature of his bearing. He seemed to have an inexhaustible fund of patience and a gift for making his passengers comfortable. I noticed that if it was raining, he would run up the stairs to give someone the tip that there was room inside. With old people, he was as considerate as a son, and with children, as solicitous as a father. Solicitous here means someone who shows concern, care, and interest. He had evidently a peculiarly warm place in his heart for young people, and always indulged in some merry jest with them. Generally, people are kind and polite to the older ones or to the little ones, but here was somebody who was very friendly even with the youngsters. If he had a blind man on board, it was not enough to set him down safely on the pavement. He would call to Bill in front, that is the driver, to wait while he took him across the road or round the corner or otherwise safely on his way. In short, I found that he irradiated such an atmosphere of good temper and kindliness that the journey with him was a lesson in natural courtesy and good manners. What struck me particularly was the ease with which he got through his work. The essayist has already mentioned in the past that he realizes that a conductor's job is a very, very difficult job. But here was a conductor who got on with his job, with his work, with his daily routine very easily and comfortably. And the essayist wishes to insist that it was only because of his good nature, his friendliness, and his polite behavior towards his passengers. If bad manners are infectious, so are good manners. If we encounter incivility, most of us are apt to become uncivil. But it is an unusually uncouth person who can be disagreeable with sunny people. Most of the time, when we encounter people who are happy, cheerful, polite, respectful, we also tend to respond to them and to the others who we meet in the same way. It will be an unusually ill-mannered person who will continue to be ill-mannered and rude even in the company of people who are happy and cheerful. And he remembers the lines written by the great poet Keats and says, "Nothing clears up my spirits like a fine day." A line written by Keats. A cheerful person descends on even the gloomiest of us with something of the benediction of a fine day. Meeting a cheerful person, meeting a person who is respectful and polite is like a blessing for us, because generally the rest of the day will also go well when we encounter a person like this. And so, It was always fine weather on the polite conductor's bus, and his own civility, his conciliatory or friendly address, and good-humoured bearing infected his passengers. The infection of good humour, of friendliness, passed from the good conductor, from the polite conductor, on to all his passengers. In lightening their spirits, he lightened his own task, and that's why his happiness or his gaiety was not a wasteful luxury, but it was a sound investment. I have missed him from my bus route of late, but I hope that only means that he has carried his sunshine onto another road. It cannot be too widely diffused in a rather drab world. And I make no apologies for writing a panegyric. A panegyric is a speech that praises somebody. The writer says, I have no regrets for writing a panegyric on an unknown bus conductor. Why? Again, the essayist refers to another great poet, Wordsworth, and he says, if Wordsworth could gather lessons of wisdom from the poor leech gatherer on the moor, I see no reason why lesser people should not take lessons in conduct from one who shows how a very modest calling may be dignified by good temper and kindly feeling. Wordsworth has written a poem in which he refers to a poor leech gatherer who he encountered on the lonely moor or a piece of open, uncultivated land. And Wordsworth saw that this poor leech gatherer, who was doing the lowest of jobs of gathering leeches, was happy and cheerful despite his difficulties. In those days, gathering leeches was a job done by poor people. The leeches were required by medical doctors in treating patients who needed their blood to be purified. And so he says that if Wordsworth could take his lessons from a leech gatherer, we can also take our lessons from a bus conductor. In conclusion, the essayist tries to analyze what could have caused this impoliteness and rudeness to come into our social interactions, and he also offers a very simple solution. It is a matter of general agreement that the war has had a chilling effect upon those little everyday civilities of behavior that sweeten the general air. We must get these civilities back if we are to make life kindly and tolerable for each other. He is referring here to the Second World War, but we can say that the general restlessness around us has caused us to become rude, impatient and impolite with the people around us. The financial difficulties that we face, the death and destruction that we see around us makes us uncivil towards other people. But we have to try and bring politeness and kindness back into society. We cannot get them back by invoking the law. The policeman is a necessary symbol, and the law is a necessary institution for a society that is still somewhat lower than the angels. But the law can only protect us against material attack. So on one hand, we have the policeman, we have the law. These are necessary because we are lower than the angels, which means we are not perfect. But the law can only protect us against a material attack. If somebody attacks us physically or violently, the law can protect us against that. On the other hand, we have the liftman's method. The liftman's way of meeting moral affront by physical violence. Is that going to help us to restore the civilities? No. I suggest to him that he would have had a more subtle and effective revenge if he had treated the gentleman who would not say please with elaborate politeness. He would have had the victory not only over the boor but over himself. and that is the victory that counts. The essayist suggests that the liftman, instead of throwing that passenger out angrily, should have treated him with elaborate politeness. There was a double advantage in that. One, the passenger would have had a change of heart and would have become more respectful and polite. And along with that, the liftman himself would have had victory over his temperament, over his anger. And that is the victory that really counts. Victory over oneself. The polite man may lose the material advantage, but he always has the spiritual victory. I commend to the liftman a story of Chesterfield. In his time, the London streets were without the pavements of today, and the man who took the wall had the driest footing. The essayist has a little story, a little anecdote for the liftman and for all of us. He says that in London those days, the streets had no pavements or footpaths, but the streets were lined with walls on both sides, and close to the walls was the best place to walk, because that is where the streets were the safest and the driest. And here we have a story of Chesterfield, who was then the mayor of London. And one day Chesterfield encountered a man. Let us see the interaction between Chesterfield and this man. "I never give the wall to a scoundrel," said a man who met Chesterfield one day in the street. Chesterfield was walking along the wall when he encountered a man who said to him very rudely, "I never give the wall to a scoundrel." All politicians in those days were considered as scoundrels, even today, in fact. And so he said to Chesterfield, "I don't give the wall to a scoundrel. I don't make way for a scoundrel." And what did Chesterfield do in response? He said, "I always do," said Chesterfield. And he bowed, stepping into a bow into the road. Chesterfield said, "No problem. I always give the wall to scoundrels." And then he bowed before that man and stepped into the road. Look at how Chesterfield had taken his revenge politely. I hope the liftman will agree that his revenge was much more sweet than if he had flung the fellow into the mud. Chesterfield's revenge was sweet because he had replied to the man very politely. It would not have been as effective if he had caught the man by his collar and thrown him into the mud. So students, with this we come to the end of this essay. It is an elaborate essay, but very simple and light-hearted, easy to understand, with several examples which teaches us the importance of politeness and civility in our day-to-day interactions with the people around us.